Welcome to our first program in our Leaders in Energy series on clean energy and sustainability. I am Janine Finnell and founder of the Leaders in Energy group. And I started this organization to connect with other like-minded people who delight, just as I do, in thinking about, discussing, and collaborating on energy, environmental, and sustainability issues. It seems like every day we're hearing about problems in our news related to energy and environment, whether it be how we process and extract energy, or overfishing and its impact on our food and future food supply, ocean pollution, melting of the Antarctic ice sheets, and so on. So a lot needs to be done, and sometimes it can feel very overwhelming. On the other hand, there are tremendous opportunities in terms of how the costs of technology have come down for both clean energy and energy efficiencies that can help transform our communities and create jobs. The Leaders in Energy group is working to connect individuals in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as around the United States, in the world, to help create these transformations and to connect with other individuals. It's one thing to think great thoughts all by yourself, but just imagine if you can reach out and connect with others through the power of social media to help us all bring about the changes that we really need to make in this world. We conduct in online form in the Leaders in Energy group, and we also have monthly professional networking happy hours in the Washington, D.C. area. So come and join us. We have all kinds of wonderful speakers on a variety of topics, and we look forward to any input you have on topics you might be interested in. Please feel free to check us out at our LinkedIn group, where we have over 1,100 members around the world, and we're continuing to grow. And also our website. We have starting a blog on that as well, and you're more than welcome to look into contributing on that. In our program today, we're going to be talking about sustainable manufacturing and a circular economy. I'd like to set the stage for this topic. We will be having two members from the Leaders in Energy group discussing this in more depth. But I want to introduce why we thought this was an important topic. We as a society manufacture and make things that we need in our daily lives, and we make, use, and dispose of many products that create toxic waste or end up in landfills, or maybe even worse, in the ocean. You may have been reading about gyres of plastic content that are actually creating islands in the Pacific Ocean from plastic waste. This design is referred to as cradle to grave. And more than 90% of the materials extracted to make durable goods in the United States become waste almost immediately. Often you can find that it's just cheaper to replace a product, buy a new cell phone, buy a new appliance, rather than to repair the old. And there's even a concept for this called planned obsolescence. There are concerns being raised that this model is not a wise use of resources, and it cannot continue indefinitely. It's interesting because I recently went to the store and purchased this tea light, and I was kind of excited because I saw that there were some batteries on sale, and I thought, this is fantastic because I'll be able to purchase the batteries and I won't have to throw this out when the battery has expired, and then I won't be clogging up the landfills with all these tea lights and everything. But it turned out that the battery itself was like 3 times the cost of the tea light. So it's like we're almost encouraged to just keep buying and throw things away because we want to do an alternative. Sometimes it is more expensive. But you may say, Janine, wait, we're doing so much more now in terms of recycling. We really have gotten a lot smarter. And that, while that is true, recycling efforts have grown. We still can do better in terms of the intelligent design of products, and we will be talking about that with our guests. Sometimes when we recycle products, we end up reducing or losing the value of the original material. Let's take, for example, a typical juice box. It is an amalgam of aluminum, plastics, and paper. And while you can recycle aluminum again at the same value, same level of value, if you add cardboard and plastic, you weaken the quality of the aluminum. And moreover, the biological content of the cardboard is contaminated with the aluminum. You end up with a downgraded material of lesser value, which is known as downcycling. Now, through good design, we can rethink how we use these materials. For example, in nature and a living world, for millions of years, materials have cycled and flow in a circular process. Remember the song Circle of Life from the Disney movie The Lion King? Leaves fall and enrich the soil, allowing for new seeds to grow. Energy is provided by the sun, and nothing is wasted. This process is referred to as cradle to cradle, and is circular, where the output of one product becomes the input for another. So if we accept that nature's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so we too can operate a circular economy? A circular economy includes the concept coined as upcycling, and that is when processes and activities make the world better than it was before. For example, you can manufacture in a way that water comes out of a facility that's even cleaner than when he went in. Imagine, you don't melt food-grade plastic and downcycle it into a park bench. Instead, you create food-grade plastic that is non-toxic and can be reused as food-grade plastic. In preparing for today's program, I was struck by this quotation from the book Upcycle, Beyond Sustainability, Designing for Abundance by William McDonough and Michael Bloomgard. It says, the goal of the upcycle is a delightfully diverse, safe, healthy, and just world with clean air, water, soil, and power, economically, equitably, ecologically, and eloquently enjoyed. So is there any way to wave a magic wand to get us to this world that McDonough and Bloomgard envision? One that'll be a better place for us, not only for our children, but for the children of other species. I would now like to introduce to you two members of the Leaders in Energy group who will be with us today to discuss these topics in more detail. Silvia Leahu-Aluas is our Director of Sustainable Manufacturing. She's the principal and owner at Sustainable Manufacturing Consulting. She offers her expertise to manufacturing companies interested in creating and maintaining a sustainable business. She has engineering and MBA degrees. She is dedicated to the revival of U.S. domestic manufacturing and works within a network of consultants and organizations to make the circular economy the new model for sustainable and prosperous U.S. industrial regions. Barbara Englehart is a business sustainability consultant in the D.C. region. She implements solutions that are good for the planet with a business-oriented approach. Her background includes working at Verizon, MCI, and Arthur Andersen. She has accounting and MBA degrees. Barbara founded and runs the Northern Virginia Sustainability Network of local governments, universities, and large corporations, a group dedicated to advancing sustainability in Northern Virginia. I also want to make a brief shout out that we have another Leaders in Energy colleague, Dr. Elvin Ugazulu, working with us. She was not able to be with us today as she is traveling internationally outside the country. She's the author of the book Synergies for Sustainable Energy. Dr. Ugazulu works at SRA International and also teaches at George Washington University. And in terms of my background, I have also worked in energy and sustainability sector for numerous years, and my skills have been applied as a researcher, writer, communicator, and program analyst and manager. I've worked both in the public and private sectors, such as in the Foreign Service, as well as companies with DynCorp and IBM. So let's kick off our discussion on the topic of sustainable manufacturing and the circular economy. Let's start with you, Silvia. You're a member of the Leaders in Energy group, and you're currently leading an initiative for us as the Director of Sustainable Manufacturing. Can you tell us more about this initiative and your work?
Yes, I think one of the purposes of the Leaders in Energy group is to contribute to a sustainable economy in the United States and throughout the world. And as manufacturing continues and will continue to be an important economic activity, we think we should change it on a sustainable path. So this is where my passion both for manufacturing and for sustainable development coalesce around implementing and creating a flourishing and functioning circular economy in the United States. Among other things, circular economy is based on highly collaborative characteristics. So here is where our group comes in very handy, since the group enforces a lot of collaboration across work experiences, across professional backgrounds. So people with different skills come together towards accomplishing these objectives of clean energy, sustainable economy in all its aspects.
And can you tell us more about the workshop that you're working on that'll be brought by the Leaders in Energy group?
So a subgroup of us that you just mentioned, the four of us are working in bringing the concepts to practice. So we're organizing workshops in the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, Baltimore area with the purpose of educating people from different industries, from different company sizes, from government and non-governmental organizations on the concept of the circular economy, on the best practices, and then on implementing, that would be our long-term goal, implementing a functioning circular economy in the Washington metropolitan area.
Excellent, thank you. Let's step back and talk about definitions, or Barbara, did you want to add anything at this point, or, well, why don't I go?
Just that we're working together. We've found that the small group is all passionate and has this expertise and background, so it's helping others get educated on implementing this circular economy that really, in the bottom line, is good for business, which is kind of my motto of business sustainability.
Very good. Let's step back a little bit and talk about some definitions. Silvia, let's talk about starting with the big picture of sustainability, marketing, or sustainable manufacturing.
Yes, sustainable manufacturing.
And just let me know when you want this slide on the screen.
Yeah, you can switch it. Sustainable manufacturing is just part of the general concept of sustainable development, which acts upon three major dimensions: economy, society, environment. In what regards manufacturing, there are certain specific aspects that the OECD model reflects very well. What should we be focusing on in achieving sustainable development through manufacturing? When it comes to society, human rights, fair pay are essential. When it comes to economy, we still need to have businesses profitable, to have healthy revenues, but also to act according to the law, to combat corruption and bribery. When it comes to nature, to eliminate all the negative impacts and to start changing the dangerous trend that we see on climate change.
Can just back up, OECD, Organization
of Economically Developed Countries.
What is it? Organization for Cooperation and Economic and Development. I think they're headquartered in Paris.
Yes.
Just for people that may not be familiar with that. should we move now? Barbara, do you want to talk about the
I think
business model,
Silvia was talking about the overall perspective in the community and the development. I do business sustainability and work with specific organizations. So I have a framework that when I work with organizations, I walk them through at a real high level. I think you have a slide there for my framework. But there's a couple factors that if you're in an organization, what should you be thinking about to be more sustainable, and if you want to move through to sustainable manufacturing in a circular economy. There's a couple key environmental factors. It's the energy, your water use, materials, and toxic control. You should be thinking about what's coming in your organization and what's going out of your organization. So what's the waste and disposal that you have? And you should look at all aspects of your business. So in the beginning, or at least when I got into this, it was all about green buildings, which is great, and your facilities and real estate are an important environmental factor that you need to consider. But it's also your products and your services, your transportation and shipping, which gets into the discussion of the manufacturing that we're talking about. And then don't forget your administrative function. You're using computers, you're using energy to heat your office space. So all of those areas of your business. And then the last consideration is what we really are talking about, the circular economy, trying to operate within that closed loop business cycle. So looking at what's coming in, again, trying to minimize those virgin natural resources that you're using, trying to minimize what's going out and into the landfill. Can you replicate what nature's doing and try to compost to maybe use that waste for another purpose, so recycling, or going back to nature to actually feed the soil. It's all about using the resources effectively and being able to put those back in the business cycle. So I think what we tend to think about, or what we tend to do right now, are very linear processes. So we take from the earth, we use it once, and then we basically throw it into landfill. And that's not a very efficient use of resources. So what we're trying to talk about is putting that, instead of going in a straight line, get it into a circle. Once you bring it into the cycle, use it again and again, reuse it, and try to feed that cycle. So that's the most effective use of our resources.
Sure makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and it's not rocket science, it's pretty basic, but it's just raising that awareness and thinking about all of those things, and I put it out on a grid and work and chart that out. So then looking at it, thinking about how you're using all those areas, and then say, okay, well, what's my biggest impact area? Where can I make changes and incrementally get to that circular economy?
So in other words, is for us to bringing back the systems that we operate in our advanced civilization, more in tune with the nature cycles, right? And
learning from
nature. from
yeah,
nature.
As we've said, there's a lot of processes in nature that have evolved over millions and millions of years, and they're quite efficient.
While at the same time not returning to a natural state. So we're going to continue to make progress in our standards of living, in our technologies, but not against the limits of our natural habitat, but in balance with our natural habitat. So we're going to be more careful about the negative impacts that we have on the environment and also on the society, and transform them into positive impacts. So from negative externalities to positive externalities.
So that sounds like more of the vision that we were talking about with the original quotation.
Exactly.
With William McDonough and Michael Braungart. Yeah.
Well, I guess, and why do we care? So there's the positive side, but there is a limited number of resources. And the way I think of it is our natural resources that are coming from the earth, the land, the soil, the agriculture, the forests, our energy sources, as well as our water sources. They're all scarce resources, or there's not a supply forever.
Well, although some would say solar is unlimited, right, yeah.
Solar is a renewable one. It's the ones that aren't renewable that we want to try to find what's the alternative renewables. But just there, that is our supply chain that fuels our economy, and that's very important to our economic success and the people and the community and the social aspects. But if you think about our growing population, which is now 7 billion, It's projected to go to 9 billion by 2050. And to put that in perspective, back in 1960, it was 3 billion. So our population's gone from in my lifetime, 3 billion to 7, projected to go to 9. It's like when I look around, that's why the world feels more crowded. When I moved into the DC area, I moved in Arlington, and Dulles Airport was way out in the boonies or in the rural area.
In the field.
Yeah.
And prior to that, 1900, it was 1.5 billion.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it keeps
Yeah.
doubling. So that's why when you
Exactly.
think about it and you think about the resources, the core of our supply chain, we're using it up. The world is more crowded. So that's where we have to say there's infinite resources, and if we want to continue to fuel our economy, we have to use more efficiently the resources that we have. And that's, again, this whole concept of making it more efficient and using it over and over again.
Although, just to play devil's advocate, because William McDonough, in his book on Upcycle, he says there are no limits if we are really smart in terms of our innovation in the future and the energy that we use from the sun, where there really are no limits. We just have to be smarter the way we do it so we don't inadvertently deplete the scarce resources we have now.
Right,
we
but there's
we
no
have to be
limits on
smarter.
how much we can do if you move to a circular economy, and meaning, like you said, the sun. Use a renewable resource instead of taking the fossil fuels that take millions of years to be regenerated. That's not going to be renewed in our
Exactly,
lifetime.
exactly.
Solar, on the other hand, there's enough sun in our Earth to fuel all of our energy needs.
Or geothermal,
Or
there are
geothermal,
a
yes.
whole variety of energy sources
Hydropower,
that
yes,
you need to be
absolutely.
open
But
to.
that's where, in the circular economy, you're using those renewable resources. You're not taking from the earth and then using it and spitting it out. The sun is renewable.
Exactly, exactly. Good points. So I know that we had talked about some of the issues in advance of our discussion here today, but you know, if this is such a great system, then I'm wondering how we can start to go about in terms of working on beginning steps to start implementing this system.
Yeah, you're right. People have been talking about it for decades, and the question is, why don't we see it universally adopted? There are pockets of good examples of circular economy, but it has not become mainstream yet. And I think one of our goals is to mainstream it in the United States. But this is a very good question that we need to answer ourselves. If it's so extraordinary and it answers all our big problems that we're confronted with, what do you think, Barbara? Why haven't we seen it become mainstream? Do you think the challenges are so great that it scares businesses and other organizations?
Yeah, I was going to say it's somewhat a couple reasons, but a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. When we only had the population of, whether it was 3 billion or 1.9, it felt like resources would last forever. We had plenty of land to throw that landfill.
Right.
It becomes more of an issue when you start to have scarce resources. The economics start to play in. But our current economic system is very focused on short term. We're taking what we have. We're not thinking long term, so we're not thinking about that supply.
You would say consuming fast as possible.
Yeah, we're just consuming. And so it's the awareness, the lack of knowledge as the people that start to say, hey, this kind of matters. And I feel like in especially the last 5 years since I've been doing this now 6 years, there has been huge progress on increasing the awareness. So as you understand the implication of tossing that thing at going to landfill, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not smart. So as we raise awareness, so people come to our workshop, we'll talk more about it, listen to this video, or then as you raise awareness, then you can understand and think about the ways to move towards this circular economy. Now, a couple other things is it's a long-term focus, so you have to invest some money. We need infrastructure. So some of that actually is, you need to make investments. It makes sense economically if you have the long-term view. So if you look at the whole life cycle of a project, of a product, it makes sense to do the circular economy, to invest that time to make something that's going to last longer, that you don't have to replace and throw away 3 times. Make it once, and maybe wherever your little tea light is give you those little pieces that are replaceable to make that little tea light last, instead of, you know, throwing it away 3 times just because the battery, a piece of it, died.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, where I guess the battery lasts 100 hours, but the LED light itself is thousands of hours.
Yeah, so that LED
light, you
you
use thousands of
batteries.
batteries.
Yeah, but yet the battery is so expensive, so it's almost as though the economics are kind of cockeyed.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely,
everyone's
yeah.
operating on their quarterly stock price and the earnings release and all of that. So that's the motivation. And so it's hard, if you're in a finance, you know, role, to justify that longer term, because you're worried about what's the quarterly earnings going to look like, instead of what's the total life cycle cost of something and making the right decision. So we need more of that long-term view.
And I guess on the positive side, we are starting to see more strides in changes in economic indicators, and people, various organizations have been talking about different indices, saying that maybe gross national product doesn't really make sense because you're only measuring transactions, so that if you have an oil spill, it looks as though fantastic, you've got more economic activity, but it may not be a good economic activity. So what other indices are there? There's a Happy Planet Index that has been developed by Nick Marks at the National Economic Foundation, and he actually did a TED Talk on that that I highly recommend if people have a chance to see that, where he has an indices where he's trying to actually maximize the happiness and well-being of the citizens and the population, and minimize the resource consumption. So really eke out everything you can do on your resources to maximize the happiness for the citizen.
This relates very well to what you said about we have unlimited growth potential, but I think we all need to agree what is good life, and I think all these alternative measures focus on that. What is good life for everybody on the planet? So probably some of us in the developed world will have to reduce our expectations of material well-being and increase our non-material well-being while raising it for the rest of the population. So we would like to see, through the circular economy and sustainable development in general, we expect to see the reduction in economic inequities throughout the world. And not only for us living today, but for all the generations that will never meet because they haven't been born yet, but for which we have responsibility to live a world better than we inherited. So giving
right now, I don't think we're doing that. I mean, we're definitely using up all the supplies today and not leaving them for the next generation.
Yeah, we're consuming in the developed world 2 planet Earth, and there is no second planet Earth. As somebody said, there is no planet B. So we need to be careful with the one that we have and share it equitably with the rest of the human beings and all the other living things.
Well, because all the other living things contribute, that's that supply chain. I mean, that's part of our ecosystem.
And the biodiversity that is necessary for life on our planet.
Now, I think we were going to talk a little bit about how we can make this shift, and I guess there are some positive signs out there that there are a number of companies that have been working ahead in terms of conducting sustainable manufacturing processes. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some examples of those companies.
So from large to small companies, many of them are great examples of being leaders in sustainable manufacturing in general and implementing the circular economy. I would mention mostly American companies, although they're all over the world, but just to show that there's movement in the United States too, we just need to build a more critical mass. So Caterpillar, very strong on sustainability, but in particular on remanufacturing. And I would say if you can remanufacture those kind of engines and heavy equipment, you can remanufacture anything. Ford Motor Company, Cisco Systems, Steelcase, Autodesk, so from all kind of industries, and these are big companies in their fields. But then there are very tiny ones like iFixit, that is proving that you can repair almost any
even
mobile
an
phone.
iPhone,
Even an
despite
iPhone
what
that
people
was
say, yes.
considered non-repairable. Any other examples that you can think
there's
of?
One that, the wonderful one that a lot of people mention is Ecovative, which is two young guys pretty early out of college created a mushroom, mushroom mycelium, I'm probably not pronouncing that
yes.
right, combined with agriculture waste to make an alternative to styrofoam packaging. So, and you think about a little package of mushrooms, how that feels like styrofoam. What a genius idea is. They grow it around the agriculture waste, and now that's taking off to be used as a substitute for styrofoam. Styrofoam's something that you have to use fossil fuels, so it's a scarce resource, and won't biodegrade. The mushroom styrofoam packaging not only is from a renewable resource, it takes a couple days to grow. And then when you're done with it, you can throw it in your garden and it'll decompose and compost. So that's a wonderful example. They're up in New York, so that's an American company, and growing and doing great things. There's a lot of other small examples. I know we saw a small company taking old fire hose and taking that very durable material and making fashion accessories. So you can have a purse out of an old fire hose, another wallet.
An example of upcycling.
Yeah, upcycling.
Upcycling.
Okay, yeah.
There was another one I was going to mention. I'm blanking out on it. But a lot of neat stuff. Oh, the Brazil company, that they had a real issue with the litter from after campaigns, and they make their campaign signs out of wood. So someone cleaned up the city, took all this wood, and now makes furniture out of it. So they have a company that's upcycling the old campaign signs. So they took a problem, made an opportunity, and now they're making furniture. I was telling you guys, I have a friend that refurbishes furniture. So she takes real wood furniture and does some painting, refurbishing, and then sells it on the market. So this is all, there's big companies, there's little companies working with the circular economy. So there's lots of examples. I guess you were talking about the American companies, which we're very happy with, but I would also say I think Europe is far ahead of the American companies, and they're 10 steps ahead of us. There's lots of really good examples from Europe using already in the circular economy.
That's a great point, because it leads to what we were going to talk about, were institutions that are helping to set the certifications and standards and really drive our economy towards this vision of the more circular economy. And isn't Ellen MacArthur Foundation, is that in England?
Yes,
okay.
And probably
Speaking
one
of
of the most involved in making the circular economy successful. In fact, this month at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, for the first time there will be awards given for the circular economy. So we are delighted to hear that, and it's also proof that the concept is being adopted. And I think this is where the Leaders in Energy group contribution and our work comes in, to constantly share knowledge, share best practices, show people examples of successful implementation, so they have the courage to switch from their traditional model, their existing legacy models, to these new ones. Because we must admit it is not easy, particularly in manufacturing. Any change incurs a lot of cost. But I think if we show that the total cost that affect, for instance, outside the boundaries of the manufacturing entity itself are larger than are accounted for in the internal costs, the people will be convinced. And also, if you show them that they will gain on their top line. So there will be economic benefits, there will be new products, there will be new revenue streams. So there is a lot of talk about shifting from product from consumer to user, which is an essential concept in the circular economy, where us as individuals need the performance of the object, not owning the object. So a lot of producers are going to change from selling to leasing, selling the function of the product.
Did you mention Philips? Was that, or were you mentioning it, Barbara? Lumens, that they were selling?
That was the concept,
lumens?
yeah. You're selling lumens instead of selling a light bulb.
And
you're
Philips
selling
is
a dishwasher and
the washing is
the equipment, yeah, but you're not selling
you're
the actual
leasing
device.
It, I guess, or
exactly, that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, and
so
then you would return it if it doesn't work to the manufacturer.
Yeah, you return,
swap, and then they have the parts, and they can reuse. Then they have designed it, hopefully in a true circular economy, to design what parts that can just pull out, reuse, melt down, re-engage into that circular economy.
That makes so much sense, because right now municipal governments are really involved in disposing a lot of the trash, whereas I understand a European model is many times the manufacturers have more of the responsibility.
Yeah, I think so. The paradox that we're in Sweden, they now import trash for their incinerators because there isn't enough trash, and we want to be there. And that's also a good example. The circular economy tries to stay as far away as possible from the end stages. So landfill is you try to postpone it as much as possible. In the end, entropy takes place, right? There is nothing we can do against the laws of physics. Yeah, but
ideally
we should postpone the disposal as long as possible.
Which is that,
not even have disposal, right? Isn't
it's that concept of that's in Cradle to Cradle of technical nutrients. So you put it in, and you keep using it and keep using it. So like you started with that plastic, the food grade plastic, you put it in the system, and then you use it and use it and use it, and for as long as you can, and then hopefully doesn't go out to that landfill.
And as you mentioned, if you design it from the very beginning with that in mind, that you are going to be able to repurpose your product, disassemble and refurbish, disassemble and recombine in a better performing product. If you think thoroughly at the design stage of what will happen at the end of the life of a product,
how's it going to get back into that cycle?
And again, this is where we want to share knowledge with people that have this responsibility, designers, other technical staff that maybe do not have enough time to learn about these bigger concepts. So we're very happy to share knowledge and also get their feedback, because again, we must remember that whatever solutions are offered have to be practical, right? Implementable, not highly theoretical.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's also where we talked about is by raising the awareness, there's lots of things you can do that are fairly easy. Again, you can be designing, but you can recycle. I mean, even in the U.S., we can recycle now. Maybe not as much as we'd like, but you can get started
in San
immediately.
Francisco, aren't they moving to complete zero waste, I think?
They're composting, so other cities within the U.S. can learn from that. So it's a long-term problem, but there can be action today with goals on big changes, but you can start making an impact today.
And that's an excellent point, because the product-to-product innovation center that William McDonough and Michael Brungart have developed, I think they have initially over 2,000 products that are certified, so you can start to buy some of these products right now.
And so as buyers, we should give business to them to put, make our money count as a vote. And that's what I actually do. I buy method cleaning products because they've been certified. They are that circular cycle. So absolutely, and that's another good organization. I mean, you've mentioned it already, but Cradle to Cradle product innovation and what they've done. I mean, they're one of the ones that they say were my inspiration for the whole concept of the circular flow.
We might be getting a little off topic in this question, but unfortunately sometimes those products seem to be more expensive. We were talking a little bit about that earlier, that sometimes if you want more organic products, unfortunately that seems to be more expensive than maybe buying sort of a junk equivalent.
Which is why it's great if we can switch from product to service, where again you're not going to pay the full cost of the product, just the utility of it. So it will be you're going to share a product with others. It's also important to get to scale. So the more companies get into the model, the lower the cost will become. Yeah. But I think a combination of using the product, not consuming, not buying it, and the scale of adopters of the circular economy, because like you mentioned, Barbara, all the cost of materials will come down because you're not going to use raw materials, of which extraction is very costly, and we see that with fossil fuel. Yes, we can still use them, but it's costlier and costlier to extract them.
Yeah, extraction is costlier. But on the cost piece, the other one is people tend to think, well, it costs how much money I'm going to fork out in the very beginning. So I'm going to buy something. I'm going to buy cheap stuff that doesn't last because it's cheaper. But if you think about, well, I'm going to need that washing machine, or we use my example of I just bought a toilet, it's going to last 20 or 30 years.
A low flow.
A low flow one.
Yeah.
So that's what, I had to get that low flow. But a good toilet, it was worth it because it's going to last me 20 or 30 years. If I got the cheapest one, that my last one lasts less than 10 years, if
you wasted your money.
I wasted my money. So
they're going to lease the toilet? I guess that's I wonder how
I bought the one that just went in yesterday. But if you think in longer term and what's it going to cost me over the life of this asset? So for 30 years, one toilet, even though it may be more expensive today, if I get a quality one, then one toilet over 30 years is cheaper than if I get a crappy one, she said pun intended. So I get one that only lasts me 5 to 10 years, and then I have to buy, 6 of them over the 30 years. That's really more expensive. So is it more expensive? Well, if you just look at this one purchase today, a cheap one is going to be cheaper. But the life cycle cost, actually a premium quality product, you could save money if you look that little longer term.
What a delightful conversation this has been, and it just gives you an idea in terms of Leaders in Energy, how many talented people we have and how exciting it is to have these subgroups of people, really pockets of activity, of just a lot of interesting thoughts on topics. So do stay tuned for our future series. We'll be covering many topics. Gosh, we have our happy hours coming up. Maybe just a little shout out that some of the topics we have are funding clean tech innovation. How do you pay for entrepreneurs and how can they get money for some of these wonderful innovations? Women in energy. How do we make it so that we get a diversity of gender and ethnicity involved in these important issues? And then in March we'll be doing our sustainability manufacturing workshop. Let me just ask, are there specific people that should be attending this workshop or might be interested in attending this workshop in the Washington, Virginia, Maryland area?
Anyone who is working in, and we said manufacturing, but in light manufacturing for the DC area is probably more likely, but in services. But if you have responsibility for making procurement decisions, design decisions, managers, product managers, service managers, I think you would get something out of it.
Yeah, there are some manufacturing companies in the heavy industry in Baltimore that would be welcomed, but we also welcome local governments because they will be part of any transition to the circular economy, and they have the most interest, right, because they want to maintain flourishing communities, they want to bring well-paid jobs and meaningful work in their communities. So government and some non-governmental organizations, we would like to see some farmers involved because a lot of the affluence from farming can be used in industry and vice versa. So in the end, the circular economy is as diverse and it's based on the diversity that we see in nature. So it's an imitation of an ecosystem.
That's an excellent point because we're actually going to be holding this workshop at a wastewater treatment plant where they're using those nutrients and then shipping it out to farms in the area.
We would also welcome all sizes of companies. So there might be huge companies with headquarters in the area and production facilities in other places, but they would like to learn about the circular economy, and also very small ones, the suppliers to the big OEMs. We think also that there is an interest in bringing manufacturing back, including in this area. I think you mentioned an article recently by an economist where the dependence on government expenses is being reduced. So
in the Washington, D.C. area,
area.
that they're looking for diversification as there decreases in government spending.
Well, and I guess if you're a user of goods and services, which everybody is, but if you make those procurement decisions, so understanding what you should be asking of your suppliers, how are they participating in the circular economy? What are their ingredients? How are they using it? So there's lots, it's applicable really to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And also, weren't you saying, Silvia, from a national security standpoint, that moving to a circular economy makes a lot of sense as well?
Absolutely. If you lose completely your manufacturing base, you lose any control on critical products and processes for national defense. But in general, you're going to deplete your skills if you completely remove manufacturing from your economy. And skills means both at trade and professional level. And we've already experienced that. And these are skills that are very difficult to learn. So if you lose a generation, right now we're hearing complaints that production is being reshored and companies cannot find the right skills. Well, it's because we created a gap for these skills. We also think that diverse and universal skills will be created, so people will not be so specialized to the point that when a crisis happens, a whole region falls apart, as it happened in automotive. So again, diversity, like in nature, will be essential. A diverse manufacturing base, a diverse social base in every region.
Well, and to the extent possible and where it makes sense is local resources. So does it make sense to send your resources, from the United States over to China, do some work there, and send them to India to do some work there, and then back here for us to use it? That's a lot of resources that are taking products to travel.
And a lot of pollution.
A lot of pollution. It's taking jobs out of our local economy. So does it make sense to get whatever you need locally? Is that, and I know you get points in that for LEAD, the building code for green building.
Because you're using less energy.
Because you're using less energy. And, there's lots of financial models that people are using. I can get cheap labor over there. So the bottom line, that bottom line, you can make a financial calculation and say that makes sense, but that doesn't compute those external costs of the pollution, using up the natural resources to cart it all over the world.
Excellent.
Yeah, the unemployment. But I think we should emphasize that this is not a form of protectionism, right? We're concerned only about the United States.
Right.
I think the way
it's
a global issue, and I think the circular economy will be these little circles all over the world.
Little circles all over the world. I like that.
So yes, you are going to extend as the resources allow you to. And I think we would rather exchange ideas and knowledge and innovation than material things over long distances, which I believe
it's the collaboration.
It's
and
the collaboration.
From my own background, the telecom, being able to talk to each other, communicate, and share ideas, and it also goes to the ideas are the opportunity and the innovation. So we see this as good for the economy because ultimately we use things more efficiently, but there's lots of opportunity for folks that embrace this, recognize the benefits it'll bring, and there's opportunity for business.
I love what you just said because that Happy Planet Index, where you have a vision of a happy world. As you were speaking about the little circles, I'm thinking about all these happy communities are connecting to one another and making a happy planet. Sort of the sum is larger than the total of the parts, Yeah, that was really interesting. We'll have to coordinate maybe with Nick Marks on that one. This has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our guests, Barbara and Silvia. We invite you to check out our website and browse, see what some of our topics are in terms of our workshops that are coming up, events, and our blog content. Thank you again for being with us. Again, I'm Janine Finnell, Leaders in Energy.